Welcome to Telco Training. In today's session, we're going to be looking very briefly at email and web hosting. Basically, these sessions are designed to provide you a very high-level overview of the telco products and services in a non-technical manner so that you get an understanding of the range of products and services that we offer on top of our network. So once again, as a broad overview, these are the range of telco services that we offer. All of these services are offered on the basis of telco's four-layer cake. Remember that the four-layer cake is comprised of physical infrastructure right at the bottom, on top of which we then overlay a network, which is basically the IP network. On top of that, we overlay services, which are voice, video, data, text, and many other services that are being added every day. And finally, on top of that sits content and applications. These are all the content and applications that you want to access on the internet and are very popular on the internet. So that's Telco's four-layer cake, and this is a framework to help you to understand how Telco's network, services, and content all work together. So in this section, we're going to have a brief look at email and web hosting. In the last session, remember, we talked about domain name registration and hosting, and that's the very foundation of this service, email services and email hosting. You need a domain name first before you can have an email service or an email hosting arrangement with Telco. So I'm sure every single person has seen an email address, and you're all very familiar with an email address because you have one. So an email address is structured like this: someone@telco.co.zw. So someone is the specific name of the holder of the individual email address. @ is the sign that points to which domain this email address is held at, and then the rest that comes after the @ is the domain at which you will find this email. If you're not quite sure what a domain is, go back to our previous lesson on domain name registration and domain hosting. But this whole part, telco.co.zw, is the domain at which you will find someone's email address. Now, email services are hosted on something called a server, an email server to be precise. We won't go into too much technical detail about how email servers are set up in this session, but it's enough for you to know that a server is a repository of information, and this particular server is set up to host email addresses. Now, we provide two types of services to our customers. We can either set up a physical server for them, which they can keep at their premises, which then holds all their email and email addresses, or we can host it for them. Now, hosting it for them means that the customer does not need to have a physical server, but they have a virtual server that is hosted at Telco's data center, which provides them all the facilities that a normal email server would, except that they don't need the hardware for it. This is some kind of cloud service, if you like, if you've heard of the term cloud services. Well, basically what that means is that the customer doesn't have to have a physical server at their end, but they can have a virtual server which is hosted in someone else's data center and provide them with all the facilities that they need for email services, for example. Now, the way that an email service works is that a server is set up, whether it's a physical server or it's a hosted server at the ISP's end. A physical server is set up with all the facility to host the email addresses. Then customers on their end, or the clients on their end, must have access to the internet, because this server sits on the public internet. In order for emails to be sent and received, this server must sit on the public internet, and the server and the clients must be able to access the public internet. And so once they're on the public internet, they're able to send messages to the server, which then determines which other internet servers host the email addresses of the people that emails are being sent to. And this same server also receives emails from other email servers and then transmits them back to the clients. The clients being a laptop, a PC, a smartphone, which hosts the email client of the customers. You're all very familiar with the different email services that are out there, like Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, AOL, Inbox.com, and so on. Well, mail.telco.co.zw is just one other mail service that's there. In fact, mail.telco.co.zw services Telco's employees, but also it can service Telco's customers. Also, what we can do is, because we offer virtual hosting service mail services, a domain like rbz.co.zw can also be hosted on the physical Telco mail service, but that is a domain for a specific bank or a specific company which hosts their mail with us. Web services work in exactly the same way as mail services. A web service is a different service than a mail service, but it works in exactly the same way. When we offer web services to customers, essentially we offer them in exactly the same flavors as mail services. We can either set up a physical web server for our customers where they can store their web files and then put that onto the internet, public internet for them, or alternatively we can offer them a virtual web hosting service where instead of them owning and operating the physical infrastructure, we operate it for them and we host it in our data center, but their website is then available to be seen by everybody who's on the public internet. So that's the two flavors that we can offer on our web services, and it works almost exactly as the mail services, except that a web server is a different kind of server than an email server. So here's an example of a web service that we offer to telco.co.zw. So it would usually be preceded by www, which tells you that this is a server that sits on the World Wide Web and is able to serve up content on the World Wide Web. So some of the sales opportunities that arise from this bouquet of services is, as we've said before, domain name registration, domain name hosting. Then we can do mail server configuration, which is on the client's own mail server, or we can host the client's mail server. And the same we can do with web services. We can do web server configuration on the customer's own web server, or we can host the customer's web server on our own servers in our data center. Telco, a world of possibilities, just became possible.